Hey everyone, and welcome to Holding the Line with Got Your Six Counseling. I'm Peggy, and this is Brittany. This is a space where we get real about the shit nobody wants to talk about: mental health, life, trauma, healing, and everything in between. Sometimes we get clinical, sometimes we get messy, but it's always honest. Quick reminder, this podcast isn't therapy, and it's not a substitute for professional care. We're not here to provide therapy, diagnose, or treat. If you're struggling with mental health, please reach out to a licensed provider. You don't have to go through it alone. We've got your six. We're just two trauma therapists showing up as humans first, ready to have real, unfiltered conversations about the stuff that matters. We're here to break the stigma, share what we've learned from both sides of the therapy room, and talk about the challenges people face every day, especially in the veteran and first responder communities. Whether it's trauma, burnout, relationships, identity, or just getting through the week, we believe that these conversations matter. They deserve space, and that's what we're holding the line for. So let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Holding the Line with Got Your Six. Today is season 2, episode 3, Tiny People, Big Responses. Last episode we talked about teenagers and their responses in having them in therapy and such. And today we're going to talk about the tiny ones, the ones that are not yet teens. Maybe they are 13, 14 years old, but more focusing on the little tiny ones and how trauma presents in them, how it's so different than it is for adults or even older humans. Let's get into it.
Last season we touched on this a bit. We did tiny people play therapy.
Yes.
But this is kind of like the reason why they're coming in for said play therapy.
Mm-hmm. Or things that you would see that signal something's not quite right. Mm-hmm. One of my biggest pet peeves with kids is that adults, through no fault of their own, because that's how they were raised, expect children to be these emotionally regulated, centered humans, and they're just not. They're just not. They are still learning how to regulate their emotions long through even to adulthood. So why is there such a big reaction to kids with trauma or even small emotional outbursts?
Okay, let's start naming it, because this is something adults do, but we expect kids not to do this. Mm-hmm. It looks differently in an adult, but it's the meltdown that seems to come out of nowhere. You know, the adult response is, I am overwhelmed, I am anxious, and they burst out or lash out in anger, whereas a child is just completely, they're doing the same. They're overwhelmed and they are melting down and going, I have no idea how to regulate my little body here.
Right, which I think brings up an important thing we need to distinguish. Like, a meltdown is not a tantrum. And I don't mean this in
goal-oriented.
Right. One, and you and I, with our kids on the spectrum, we know the difference, but a lot of people think that even a meltdown is a tantrum. But tantrums are goal-oriented. I am throwing a tantrum because you said no to the candy bar I wanted while we were at Target. A meltdown, like you said, is the overstimulation. It's the overwhelm. It's the, I just can't do one more thing. You see that a lot in kids before and after school.
Yeah, because if you gave a child something during a meltdown and it doesn't calm them down, hey, that's not goal-oriented. If you gave a child what they wanted during a tantrum, that's manipulation.
Right. Also, here's the thing with that. I'm just going to die on this hill right now, okay? If your kid's prone to throwing tantrums, that's because they have learned through conditioning over time that if mom says no to that candy bar and I throw a tantrum long enough, loud enough, and big enough, I will get what I want. If you're going to give in right away. There's no need for all that, because all you're doing is teaching them that they can throw this tantrum and that's how they get their way. And they're going to do that even as adults, because it is in there, it's ingrained in them to now throw a tantrum. It might not look like a child kid tantrum, but they're still throwing a tantrum nonetheless. So tantrums and meltdowns are very different. Some people can distinguish and some people can't. And just because you think your kid's throwing a tantrum doesn't mean they're a brat. It means that they've been conditioned to act this way to get their needs met, even if it is a candy bar or a toy or whatever.
Because all behavior
Is a form of communication. It is. It is. And kids can't communicate the way that we do. So all they can communicate through is their behavior and their emotions, which they still don't have a grasp on, which is why their overreaction to something small feels so big. It's like, wow, your socks were on upside down. It's okay, let's fix it. Well, now their
feel
whole
that.
morning is ruined. I cannot
Feel that.
stand when the line is not quite right. Okay.
That's why I walk around sockless and shoeless all the time.
I hate socks. I hate them so much. So no, I feel that, but it doesn't ruin my whole day. I just fix it because I've learned how to. Right. If it's upside down in my shoe, it's definitely ruining my day. Those shoes are coming off, and I'm fixing it. Right. So moving on.
The behavior that feels confusing or exhausting and defiant, because again, these are new for them. Just like feelings and emotions and everything for kids. They don't necessarily know how to put a label to it. Just that it's overwhelming and they don't know where to put it.
No, they don't know where to put it. They don't overreact. They are reacting with the tools that they have, which might not be anything. Because if we're not modeling those as parents, then they're doing the exact same things that we're doing, which can make you feel sane at times. When you're told that by other people, you're like, oh no, oh no. And just because it feels defiant to this is another peeve of mine. Well, they're being defiant. No, they're trying to regulate. They're trying to stop this cycle, even if they don't fully understand it. Not that they can't be defiant. I'm not saying that, because some are. But it feels overwhelming and exhausting to everybody. And it probably just feels defiant to you as the parent, depending on your parenting style. I'm just like, oh, get away from me. Because I'm getting overwhelmed, right? And exhausted. And I'm like, we got to come back to this later. I can't, right?
Yep. And like, let's acknowledge those caregivers, the moms, the dads, the first responders, and military families that are already dealing with like the big in the systems and the households, because there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of self-doubt of, am I doing this right? Am I handling this right? Am I doing enough? Because then the parents are getting overwhelmed, the kids overwhelmed, everybody is melting down all at once, and everybody's sitting on the floor crying. Cool.
I will say this, shitty parents don't worry about being shitty parents, right? Good parents worry about being shitty parents, right? So if you're sitting back going, God, I'm such a shitty parent, know that you're not a shitty parent. And if you never worry about your parenting, maybe that's a sign that something's not quite right, right? Maybe you are a good parent. I don't know. I always say that. A shitty parent doesn't worry about whether they're shitty or not. Good parents worry about whether they're doing enough for their kids, whether they're meeting their needs and helping them out emotionally, right? Am I traumatizing my kids too much, or am I giving them just enough to make them funny, you know? I said that the other day to one of my patients and they died laughing. I was like, look, I don't want my kids to be traumatized, but they need just enough trauma to be funny, right? Because I feel like people who've been sheltered their whole lives don't have a sense of humor. Maybe a little bit funny.
They have the tism and they're just sarcastic, and I'm like, stop being a butthole.
Or they troll you on purpose. Like Sawyer's doing that this morning. It's weird. I still think of him like as a baby, but he's not. He's going to be 7 this week. And he knows what's going on up here, even though he doesn't say it. And that's always the hiccup. And I'm like, stop. You know what this is. Stop it. And he's like, He thinks he's funny. And I'm like, get out, go, right? So,
Well, since you actually deal with the tiny people and you see what PTSD looks like in the tiny people, what does trauma actually look like in kids versus what people have stereotyped or what they expect to look like in kids? Like, let's clarify trauma in kids because I don't think that people, I think there's a misconception about like, is it supposed to look like adult PTSD?
first, I think the misconception with trauma in kids is that it's always PTSD because it's not. Kids will trip you up. And I think we talked about this in our play therapy, tiny human one last year, is that there's several disorders in the trauma section of the DSM, two of which are only for children. Of course, you can give PTSD to a kid, which feels disgusting, but if the shoe fits, right? Um, Sometimes you think your kid has something like ODD, right? Oppositional defiant disorder, or, something along those lines, or they're just very anxious, they're very defiant towards you. And that kid probably has reactive attachment disorder, right? You might not see it or know it at first, especially when they step foot in here, but after a couple of sessions, you're like, "Ooh, okay, right?" Which is an attachment disorder of childhood, right? Then you have disinhibited social engagement disorder, which is a really fancy way of saying that someone doesn't act appropriately in social situations because of the trauma they experienced. That's a pretty rare diagnosis. I've only seen that one time in the 5 years that I've been here. Then you have PTSD. Those present in a very different way than adults because adults are able to name it and say, this is what's happening, right? Kids have big emotions, they have them fast. And it's not just they're irritable or they're angry, it is the entire spectrum of emotion. They can be aggressive, they shut down. The regression of already established milestones is usually my number one hint that I'm going down that road because there really aren't any other disorders where that's prominent except for PTSD, right? They're not, I mean, they're going to the bathroom by themselves, they're not using the baby talk anymore, but now they're going back to previously established milestones. They're bedwetting, they're using baby talk to talk to you. They're clingy, they have trouble with separation of their primary caregiver. Um, their sleep is all messed up, right? Maybe they're coming and climbing into your bed at night. That's number one. Why? Well, they're having bad dreams. But it's not nightmares about what happened. So, adults with PTSD, our nightmares are not always about what happened. Sometimes we just have really weird,
Weird.
messed up, freaky dreams, right? So, it doesn't always have to be about that. And kids can't verbalize that the way that we do, right? Um, Usually their dreams are like someone's coming to hurt them or their parents have died, right? There are some common themes, but it can be anything. They also have a lot of physical complaints, which is like the anxiety, hypervigilance, portion of PTSD for adults. Um, we feel it in a very different way because sometimes we know what we're feeling and kids don't. They feel sick at their stomach, they have headaches, right? Which, will then prevent them from going to school or doing this or doing that. And there's no cause, no medical cause for it. The biggest thing that we see in here, and I tested out day one, as soon as I set foot in here, is the restriction of play. And we talked about play therapy before. Remember, play therapy was to help kids feel safe enough to play where they weren't able to play before and now they can. Kids with trauma don't have time to play. They're too busy being stuck in survival mode. And so if they don't feel safe enough or they're in survival mode, yeah, they're not playing. They don't want to go to football practice or soccer practice or whatever. They don't want to play their games. Nothing. They're not interacting with you either. Very isolative. That's really just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? Like there's tons of other things underneath that we would use to make a diagnosis, but actually that's pretty much all of them. Um, in terms of loss and like grief and loss, they can experience regression following the loss of a caregiver or close family member too. That's not PTSD, unless it fits, if that makes sense, unless it's one of those criterion A issues, they witnessed it, it was tragic. Um, but usually they bounce back, but they feel it a lot harder and faster than we do.
I think that's
Because
also the thing that needs to be notated is oftentimes like because kids, their onset or their delay looks differently
mhm.
because something that didn't affect them in the moment may pop up, yeah, a couple years differently. Whereas, like, again, PTSD in adults, delayed onset. PTSD in a child may become hard, fast, and rapid. Or some of these other diagnoses. Criterions for children is very different than it is for an adult.
Also, in line with that, I think it's very important to note for people like us, whoever, if you already have a diagnosis of PTSD and your child experiences something that you deem traumatic, that doesn't matter. If you or I think is traumatic, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that your kid views it that way or that their nervous system viewed it that way. Don't internalize and project that shit back onto your kids, right? Unless they're telling you or giving you symptoms and showing you this presentation that like something's not quite right,
Or telling
hold the
them that they
space.
should be over it.
That too. I was getting to that. That goes the same with adults, right? But like, oh, that's been 6 months. You should be over that by now. Just let it go. There's nothing that makes me want to bash my head into a brick wall more than hearing somebody say that. Just let it go. It's fine. You just gotta let it go. You just gotta let it go, Sharon. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of that. I'm sorry.
Because telling a
Darn.
7-year old that they should be over something, okay, that works. How did it work for you, Becky?
Exactly. Exactly. Because we experience it, it's like this big, right? And so we're around it. We can kind of see around it. And kids experience it like this big. It is their whole world, especially if it is or was traumatic for them and their nervous system, and they can't get around it. School's affected, their friendships are affected, all of it. So yeah, don't internalize your kids' trauma because like we've said before, PTSD doesn't come from the event, it comes from your body's reaction to it. Don't make it worse. Normalize it. That was awful. Let's find a way through. And if it does end up being PTSD, so be it. This isn't the 1700s anymore. We have ways to push through that, right? To get around it,
Yep.
to process it, right?
And trauma and many of these other things show up as behaviors, not words. Kids are going to show you how they feel, not necessarily tell you how they feel.
I mean, some of them might tell you, but some of them might tell you, but more often than not, they are not aware. Just like adults aren't. That's one of the similarities, right? Like they might know something's off, they might know something's not right, but they can't put words to it very much the same way that some adults can't, right? They're like, I know something's not right with me. It started after blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, bro, you have PTSD. And they're like, what? No. Yes, you do. Hello,
Yeah.
welcome to the club, right? It's the most disgusting thing that I think, like, I hate giving kids PTSD diagnosis, especially when they're young. But, and it happens. It doesn't make it any less fun. But they're gonna communicate their distress physically through their behavior long before they can ever put words to it to tell you what it actually means to them or how it feels to them. Being aware of what's going on with your kid is much more important. That's weird. They haven't wet the bed in 5 years. Now all of a sudden they're wetting the bed again. What's going on here? Right? Also, let's not demonize that. Okay, a point. We're not going to demonize the regression of behavior or the things that are coming up or what they're telling you. That's when we're going to get on the Google and find a therapist to help them work through what's going on.
Yeah, like, or if I'll use KJ as an example, even though she doesn't do this, but the somatic, like tummy aches. I have a tummy ache every day and I don't want to go to school anymore.
You talking about my Kylie? My
Yeah,
KJ?
but
Yeah.
not that she does that. I'm just using her as the off brand child here.
Yeah, she very much is like, I'm so tired. And look, I have no doubt that she's tired sometimes because she stays up late, but it's always something,
Yeah.
right? Admittedly, when I was a kid, I'm gonna put my own shit out on the street for a second, right? I hated going to school. I was never that kid that loved it. My stomach was always sick. Looking back now, I realize I had hardcore anxiety. My cousin, she'd probably kill me for saying this, was the same way. She had all, I mean, still, she's a very anxious person still. But we both were the same. Like awful stomach aches. We always had a headache, and our parents taking us to the doctor trying to figure out what was wrong with us. Not that we had experienced anything remotely traumatic that would cause us to have these physical, but it was simple anxiety, right? School was overwhelming. It was too much. The people there were awful. And that was it, right? We were bullied, whatever the case, we didn't want to go. Kylie's answer is, I'm so tired. School's so boring. And I doubt that I have no doubt that it was boring. But yeah, the tummy ache. I have one right now that does that. She'll get to school, she's fine. And then about 11 o'clock, the nurse is calling her parents to come pick her up because she doesn't feel good. My stomach hurts. I'm going to throw up. And then as soon as she gets home, she's fine. So those are usually the cues to say, all right, so I'm like medically sure, have them checked out. That comes up clear. Now you know it's more of a like, somatic
Something
complaint
that's
that is
going on and
something that's
not
going
being
on mentally.
punitive for that.
Right, right. And I feel like now a lot of pediatricians are on it, some are not. Do your own research carefully about those things, right? Because like WebMD and certain websites are like, you already died or whatever. Be very careful with
Is
those
it my
things.
ponytail, my caffeine over intake, or brain tumor?
Right, right. If I ever have a brain tumor and an aneurysm, it's just going to take me out because I will never know the difference between like a regular headache and those things. But I
That's
try to
why
stay
we're
off the
like
Google.
be careful with Google because it will give you like those
Be
three
careful.
answers.
And like, there's nothing wrong either with reaching out to a local therapist or, your kid's school counselor at school. They are still licensed counselors. They might not diagnose, but I'm sure they have recollection of, wait a minute, okay, there's no medical cause. So like maybe it is anxiety. Maybe it's this. Maybe you should go talk to someone and I can help you find someone. School counselors are great resources for that sort of thing. Have them reach out. Maybe they meet with a school counselor off and on until you find someone. There's always an option for that in the meantime. You don't have to figure it all out yourself. That's why we're here, right? So moving on.
Let's go over kind of tiny nervous systems, big responses. Because like there is a brain body connection even for the tiny people. The fun part is theirs ain't developed all the way yet.
That's an important distinction because when you say development too, because some kids physically are what, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Developmentally, they're nowhere near that age, which makes it hard for them to regulate and for their nervous systems to be on board with what's going on, right? And their nervous systems are still developing, which is why it's so important for us to be regulated so they can learn what that looks like. Look, I'm going to cover my face too. Admittedly, I'm not always regulated. You don't have to be. But if your kid is dysregulated and you can't be regulated, it's time to step away. It's time to do some meditation or go shove your hands in some dirt, some grass, do something to come back, because the only way that kids learn how to regulate their nervous system is through co-regulation. Mom is regulated, so now I can be regulated.
So if you're
I always,
surprised when they match energies, it's you, babes. It's you.
right. If you are overly frustrated and your kid is overwhelmed or overstimulated, whatever, and y'all are matching that energy, y'all are just going in circles around each other, right? Instead of stopping that cycle to be like, all right, let's go take 5, and then we're going to come back and figure out how to work through this, right? If they never learn how to co-regulate, like regulate through co-regulation, then their nervous system's always going to be all jacked up. And then they're always that person that's reading the room and searching the room to see whose nervous system is the most regulated, so they can match that energy. But you know what else they're picking up on? All the bad vibes and bad energies and everybody else's trauma too. Those people think they're empaths, but they're not. They're just very dysregulated. I'm
Well,
like, you're not an empath. Stop it.
I'm an empath. I'm overly empathetic.
I can pick up on people's emotions. No, that's just trauma. I'm sorry to tell you that you're reading the room to feel safe. And that's what people who never learn how to regulate learn to do, right? They rely on us to help them learn. I always use the analogy for women, especially, that when your baby was a newborn and you're trying to nurse, if you went that route and they won't latch, they're not nursing, you're getting frustrated and they're frustrated. And someone on the outside sitting in the room with you is like, so and so, they can sense your anxiety, they can sense your frustration. Take a break and come back. That never stops being applied to your life with your children. If you're frustrated, they can feel it, they can sense it, and it's not helping their level of frustration either. Period. Our brains are wired for survival, not logic. So if I go into survival mode, guess what? They are too. And if I'm living in survival mode, then so are they.
I feel like this should be said every morning about 9 a.m.
Yes. Yes. I need, the ALXA to announce it. I don't like saying her name. It stresses me out because she doesn't listen to me ever. But I need her just to make some announcements, Their reaction is about perceived danger, which
They're
is
wired for
survival
survival. Not
mode. Mm-hmm.
what 5-year-old do you know has logic besides like a prodigy?
0, none. Probably not even a 7 or an 8-year-old, right? Depending on their developmental age, right? 7 or 8-year-old physically might not be 7 or 8-year-old developmentally. And so that abstract, concrete thinking is not there.
Yeah, the only one I've ever seen do that would be Riley, where he was like, I need to emotionally regulate myself. And I was like, stop.
Kids of therapists don't really count, I feel like. Well, I mean, yours don't. Yours therapize their therapists. Mine are either few and far between. I don't know what they're doing anymore.
He did that
But like,
he did that in first grade and I about died. I was like, you did this what? His teacher's calling me, going, like, he's super good at this. Don't know if it worked.
some kids are like, I feel like the school systems are getting better with like the social emotional learning. Before they didn't learn any of that, and now they're really pushing.
Yeah, the school
like,
counselors are doing a fabulous job at this. Implementation versus utilization, on the other hand.
They didn't used to do that. And so all we got were a lot of mostly educated seniors that had zero knowledge of what emotions were like or how to communicate or any of that, right? So the school systems are definitely pushing that now, and some teachers are more into it than others, but I will give them credit. They're trying. So we say what feels small to adults can be overwhelming to kids. Sometimes it's big to us too, which then makes it even bigger for them. So it's super important for you to do your own work so your kids can learn how to regulate with you.
Yeah.
And if you're not, and your kid's therapist comes to you and says, you probably need therapy too, we're not attacking you. We're not making it personal. We're trying to help your kid. And if we're helping your kid, sometimes that means that you also need the help. Doesn't mean anything bad. Doesn't mean you're a bad parent or a bad person, but your kid will never make progress if they're doing the work and you're still dysregulated and freaking out and having these big emotions at home, and they're trying to do the opposite. It's got to be a twofer, you know?
Counts as trauma for a child. And like we're going to touch back on it for a minute about what you said. Like, you parents don't get to internalize their own child's trauma. Look, that's your own issue to deal with in therapy. You don't get to discredit what your child thought of as something as traumatic, because it just because it was big for them doesn't, and you thought it was small. I don't give a crap. It was big for them.
And even if it doesn't qualify as a PTSD diagnosis, it's still traumatic nonetheless, right? Because they're seeing it as traumatic and their body is too. So, like I said earlier about separation from caregivers, um, regardless of how that happens, maybe that's PTSD. Maybe it's reactive attachment, which is still a trauma disorder, right? It just looks a little bit different. Um, Witnessing domestic conflict, witnessing parents do drugs, witnessing somebody dying. Um, Medical procedures for kids are scary in general. And if it goes badly or they end up in the hospital for a long period of time, they don't understand that, like, oh, I might get better. They're locked in a room surrounded by people in biohazard suits. And they're like, I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
So in the end, you're like, no, you turned out fine. But no, when I was there, I thought I was going to die. Or I didn't understand. They don't understand.
Parents' injury.
Yes.
Parents' injury is big, especially like when we're thinking about our first responders and our military. When parents deploy, when they do come home injured, parents' PTSD can be very, very scary.
I forget the statistic, but it's high that kids of parents with PTSD have an incredibly higher incidence of developing PTSD on their own. Why is that? Because their parents who have PTSD can't regulate, so neither can their kids.
Yep, that chronic
So,
like unpredictability and stress that
mhm.
comes with having a parent in the household with PTSD. So like, hey parents, get your butts to therapy, help yourself, help them.
And maybe that parent is unaware that they have PTSD, like officially, but they know something's not right. Now is the time. Now is the time because that's stopping that generational cycle of everybody in our family has PTSD. Everybody in our family is dysregulated and angry and lashing out and all these things in their own way because they're not learning how to regulate and neither are their kids. And so their nervous system's already heightened all the time. So when something traumatic does happen, their nervous system's like, boom, there you go. Where if they were not like that, their nervous system is way more regulated and can process it in a much better, faster way than if it were the opposite. Negligence is another, abuse, right? Which is a form of abuse.
Uh, we didn't really we haven't touched on it yet. Is the parentified child, where we have the 7, 8, 9-year-old that comes in walking, talking, acting like an adult. Ooh, seeing those little ones and they sound like they're freaking 25.
Yes. And they have this very profound sense of responsibility for people around them. Those are always difficult in therapy because you're trying to get them to talk about themselves, and all they're talking about is their siblings and how they're taking care of them or this or that. And you're like, no, we're talking about you. And they're like, oh, well, no, it's not about me. I'm like, but it is about you. This is the one time it is about you. But they can't do it because all they've learned is how to care for other people. And maybe that's their parent, their actual parent, and not a sibling. They're taking care of everybody in the house at 9, 10 years old, which is still traumatic in a way because those kids then become the overachieving, people pleasing ones who can't say no to people and end up getting even more traumatized later in life because they feel responsible for everyone all the time, which is not their burden to bear. It also fosters codependence, which is a totally separate issue. Totally separate issue.
So trauma necessarily isn't necessarily about what happened. It's about how the child felt when it happened.
and how their nervous system reacts.
Stop messing up our kids.
Stop messing up your own kids.
When they come in and they're all a little messed up, I'm not saying we want to fight y'all, but like there's times.
This this next one is going to have me on my soapbox for a hot second. Behavior is a signal, not a problem, because we said all behavior is a form of communication, and that's very true. If your kid is acting out, even in a negative way, that's where you're going to have to take a step back and say, what's happening here, right? Because any form of attention is better than no attention, even if it's negative. We've already talked about how kids lack regulation skills because they don't possess them. But the next one is the punishment. The punishment. I argue this until I'm blue in the face. Punishment does not teach safety, and it doesn't teach lessons.
I'm gonna spank you to make you behave.
It teaches fear and intimidation, and that I can smack you in anger, and that's okay because I'm an adult, but not okay for you because you're a kid. That's behaviorism. Just beat it out of them. How? Why? Is that scientific? Like that? No. Video games make kids violent. You know what make kids violent?
Parents that sit there and abuse kids.
Parents that beat their kids. That makes them violent.
Like there's that fine line and like the morally gray line between like a pop on the butt and you abusing your child.
Right. There's a difference between your kid, small child, reaching up to touch a hot stove and you reaching over to, no, that's hot. We don't touch. And you smacking them in the mouth or smacking them in the face or beating them with a belt or throwing whatever you like. I hear all sorts of stories, right? My grandma used to beat us with whatever she had in her hand, or she'd throw stuff from across the room or what. That is not normal. That's aggression. Let me ask you this. If you were to spank your children because they, I don't know, smashed the TV on accident, you're so angry that now you think they deserve a spanking. Who is that spanking serving more, you or your kids? You. I am spanking you because I am angry, not because it's going to teach you a lesson, right? So now I'm spanking you in anger, which teaches what? It equates to fear and intimidation, and that now I'm going to do the same thing. Or maybe I won't do the same thing, depending on the type of kid you have, right? Spanking doesn't teach anything.
What kind of crap was it when we were like in elementary school? You get whooped by the school, then you got to go home and get another one. I'm like, what the crap was that?
That's a wild concept for me because even though I went to a private school, they would just call my dad to come punish me. And that sometimes just meant he was very sternly talking to me. But I was not getting spankings at school,
What
thankfully.
survivor of the wooden paddle? Thank you.
Right. But Timothy, he went to I don't want to say that, a private school in this area that would spank him on their own. And I'm like, let me find out. Someone in my kid's school is putting their hands on my kids. I'll be like,
sign permission slips. Yes, you can corporal punish like my 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old in elementary school. Like it was a whole mood.
I'm not sure because I feel like the trolls are gonna, if they make it this far, we're gonna get lots of trolls on this, right? Because this is a very heated topic, very hot debate here on spanking your kids or not spanking your kids.
You got a double dose that day, which was BS.
Yeah. Yeah. Science, I mean, if you have access to the internet, Google is free. Look up the effects of corporal punishment on children, and you will see that it is not what you think it is. It's not. I'm not saying one way or the other that you should spank your kids or not, because in this state, you're allowed to. However, know that it's probably messing up your kids. Because if you beat the crap out of your kids as a punishment when they were growing up and then they decide not to spank their kids, that probably signals something. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
We're not saying don't parent your kids. Parent your kids.
You can parent your kids in
they
more
need
effective ways.
Yeah, they need consequences to actions and everything.
Because
but we're not
if
saying we're not saying be punitive to their emotions.
right, Kylie, perfect example. Every morning, she cries. She doesn't want to go to school. She says she's tired. Her stomach hurts. Could I spank her and force her to go? Sure. But instead, I choose to normalize the way that she feels and find a way through that makes her feel less crappy about the way that she feels. That is I'm co-regulating with her, and I'm showing her that, like, sometimes you gotta do crap you don't want to do while you feel like crap, even though that stuff goes away when she gets there. It teaches growth, but I'm not spanking her for it, because spanking, the immediate jump to spanking is also the power and control and the fear and intimidation. And I just don't want to deal with whatever it is you're going through, so I'm just going to spank you so you shut up. Tell me I'm wrong. Okay. You control these guys. Maybe we should get mom to turn off the comment. No, actually, I want to see them. I want to see them.
But then we have the kiddos that shut down because
Yep.
like shut down looks like compliance. Ooh, shutdown isn't compliance. Shutdown is a response, right?
Shutdown's a response. Shutdown is like disconnect, the detachment, all of it. Well, I'm going to shut down and comply. It's like fawning, right? I'm going to fawn because this is the only way that I stay safe. Even if I don't want to do it, it's better than the alternative. So
It's
they do it anyway.
Good behavior still hides emotions. Good, like
It does.
the overachievers. The overachievers. Look how good I did. I need you to see this. I need you to see I got an A. I did good. I did this good deed. I need you to see how good I am.
The seeking validation, right? But those kids never get that validation, because you'll hear parents say, I never had to worry about so and so. They did everything they were supposed to do. Why? Why? Was it because the older brother or sister had bad behavior and you spent all your time focused on them, so you overlooked that middle or third child, and they're just shutting down, they're fawning, they're doing all the right things to show you, look at me, and they never get recognized. So they do become the overachiever. So good behavior, compliance is not always that, like, they're doing, I don't want to say the right thing, but that they're regulated. They're not. They're very dysregulated. They're just doing a very good job of hiding it. And shutting down is safer and less vulnerable than showing you how they actually feel. And then when they do, it is a really big explosion. And you're like, what?
Yeah. And we're not going to get into some big argument about parenting styles because, look, everybody sucks at this, period.
Yeah.
You gentle parenters, millennials, boomers, Gen Xers. I'm not forgetting y'all on this one. Everybody sucks because you either take it too far to the right, too far to the left, and there is no balance.
There's no middle ground.
Everybody's pendulum is off kilter here. Okay? Everybody sucks equally. So just gonna throw that one out there.
Also, it's important to note that like our parents parented the way that they saw their parents parent, and so on and so on and so on, and back, right? Where our generation, I feel like, was kind of the first one to learn social emotional social emotional things, and that, like, hey, I can sit down with my kids and have a conversation about the way that they're feeling, or my kids can come to me and say, hey, when you bit my head off when you walked in the front door, that kind of made me feel like crap. And a lot of parents are open to that and some are not. It doesn't matter how you feel. We're not getting into a debate about that. However, sitting down and talking to your kids like humans is probably a good start, because depending on how old they are, they can manifest that. They can articulate it.
when you do have a child impacted by trauma or even a major diagnosis, you have to change up your parenting, period.
Yes.
You have to parent your every child differently because they're not one size fits all.
The best example of that, we say trauma, that's definitely one of them. But another one that you and I can both is ADHD. Kids with ADHD do not respond to the same types of, I want to say punishment in terms of like corporal punishment, but like consequences.
Yeah.
They're just like, okay, right? People who have ADHD can find a way anyway,
Mm-hmm.
where neurotypical people are like, man, that sucks. All right, right? You have to change the way you parent and adapt and meet your kids where they are despite their diagnosis, whatever that is.
Because
Period.
if you try
Trauma.
to put a traumatized child in timeout, oof, all that's going to do is increase fear.
And now they don't trust you. You've broken that line of trust by forcing them into sitting in timeout. Regardless, you're putting them in a corner, you're putting them in their room. All you're doing is isolating them.
Mhm.
Have a conversation instead.
Telling them to calm down.
Mm.
Yep, because that, again, Becky, that worked real well.
Let me tell you, there is nothing that makes me more angry and like full of rage than when someone looks at me and goes, "You need to calm down." You done fucked up now, bro. Right? If being told to calm down pisses you off, I can tell you that it pisses your kids off and it invalidates whatever emotion they're feeling. Don't tell me to calm down. Don't tell me to have an attitude either. Even though I might, your kids might. You don't have to name it like that.
Sticker charts are stupid as shit. Because what is a dysregulated child? And this could be trauma, ADHD, whatever. Sticker charts are stupid.
Sticker
I
charts are
get
antiquated.
I get token economy and like reward, you
Token
know.
economy works really well for a lot of kids,
Mhm.
but some parents don't have the resources to get that going and keep it going, right? Whether they're gold coins or whatever, and they've got a jar. And it's a lot of upkeep and discipline to make sure that you're doing it with them and they're doing it and you're doing it the right way to teach them this sort of thing. Sticker charts aren't working. Spankings aren't working. You think they're working, but all it does is force compliance and shut down. Teaching safety first, right?
And this is
I
hard if mommy or daddy doesn't know safety.
and I don't just mean safety physical, right? You are fostering an environment that feels safe for your kids to come and say whatever it is they need to say. And that will take time. I mean, sometimes you get to the point where they're oversharing. You're like, you know what? I'm so glad that you feel safe to come tell me these things, but I feel like that's really personal, right?
So
So
much.
they
That
have
sounds
this.
like yep, it's a penis person question, not a mommy person question.
Right, right. My oldest does that, and I'm like, I am so glad you feel so safe to say those things to me, but I do not have a penis, so I don't feel like I can accurately answer that question. You should probably go find the one in the house that has one.
All the time. All the time. I'm just like, why? Why me?
Right.
I'm like
Skills,
perfectly good man right there. And they're like, no, you mom.
which brings up another important point, right? Moms are primary attachment giver, like are primary attachment figures, regardless, unless they're not there or there was an attachment rupture or something, right? So kids naturally are closer to their mothers and they say things way more openly to their mom than their dad, unless mom wasn't in the picture. And now dad or grandma or that person becomes their primary. Whoever's the primary attachment caregiver is getting it all. And you're like, maybe you should go talk to your dad about that. And they're like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay. So that's okay as long as they feel safe. Maybe we bring dad in next time. Hey, let's get your dad in here and have this conversation. So now we know that dad is not going to invalidate that or make that feel weird or awkward or joke on them about their penis problems or lack thereof, whatever it looks like. right? We're not joking on you kids. I'm just saying, okay, we're okay. Skills before consequences. Let's teach our kids to okay, circling back to the broken TV. How did we get here? What happened? Well, I got angry and I punched the TV. How'd that work out? Now you don't have a TV to watch or you don't have a TV to play games on. So, how about we figure out a way to help manage your anger, right? The consequence is already done. They don't have a TV anymore, right? That's already a done deal. That's written in stone. So now we're going to learn how to manage it. Maybe next time you learn to take breaks. When I hear you hollering and screaming down there in 5 different languages on your video games, maybe that's time to step outside and breathe some fresh air.
Right.
It's pissing me off, right?
Regulation before reasoning. Granted, again, co-regulation, adult. Hey, you are needed here.
It's really hard. That's really hard, right? I'm just going to validate that right now. Okay. Being regulated before trying to reason with your kids takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline.
Listen, Linda.
because because if you are a very logical person, immediately you want to go into the reasoning and logic of like, what WTF, what happened here, right? But they're all freaking out because they think that we're going to burn the house down because they broke the TV or whatever, or they failed a test, or they got caught smoking on school campus, whatever. Let's take a step back, right? I don't know that there's been a lot of times where like I've had to be like, we're gonna come back. I need a minute before we have a conversation.
Just a little.
Because if I talk to you right now, I'm not gonna be that person that's gonna be helpful. And maybe that's look, I acknowledge this happened. We're gonna talk about it, but it's not gonna be right now. Right? That gives you time to process the information and figure out a way through that teaches safety first skills, and the reasoning comes later with the co-regulation of you together. Because if you're pissed off and angry, guess what? They're going to be pissed off, angry, and also feeling unsafe and vulnerable. So whatever you say, it goes in this ear and it goes out that one. They're not taking it in.
We're not expecting perfection out of parents. We're not perfect people. Just be present.
And all kids are different, right? So like what works for Peggy's kids may not work for mine. What works for one of my kids might not work for another. What works for kids in therapy, it's always ever changing, right? Like don't pin your kids down to one specific thing because we're very different and so are kids, right? The way that they process things is incredibly different. And the way that they're going to co-regulate with you is different too.
And like there are some extra stressors that come in our first responder and military families because like shift work and the unpredictability of schedules and deployments and all of these extra things, like this is adding to those dynamics. There is an emotional carryover from this job.
Yes.
And like, hey parents, I need y'all to get your crap together and like get some of this under control. That means y'all going to therapy as well or just talk about it.
Just talk and listen
To each other in the family.
Right. And naming it, right? Like, I know that you're sad about the fact that I have to leave or the fact that I have to work on your birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving. We will find a solution. You see how I said we will find a solution? We are going to find a solution. I'm not trying to fix the way you feel because you're going to be sad. I still have to work. Nothing's changed. But maybe there's a compromise that we can all come to that's going to make it less crappy. And I'm also naming and validating the fact that you're sad about it. I'm sad about it too. I don't want to work on your birthday. But that's the way the world works sometimes, right? We will figure out a way through it. How can we compromise? I'm not trying to fix the way you feel. Well, just don't feel sad, Deborah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not how. Oh, okay, I'll try that. Right?
Because kids sense your stress even when you're silent. And we got a lot of strong silent types in the room.
I'm so glad you said that because when I meet with kids or parents, whichever, and if I have older, I say adults with children, and I'll ask them, they get very emotional in here, and then I'll ask about their emotional um ex- what's the word I'm looking for? Expression at home. Well, I don't let my kids see me cry. Why? Why wouldn't you? All you're doing when you hide your emotions from your kids is teaching them that it's not okay to express their emotions. Let your kids see you be upset, right? If somebody dies and you're crying at the funeral or you have some intermittent episodes, why hide that? You're
We're not
showing your
saying to
kids.
go rageful in front of your
No,
kids or to
I was
like have
getting to that, right?
full out arguments with your spouse. Like, is it okay for you to argue with your spouse in front of your kids? Yes, good. They
Yes,
need to, because they need to see what healthy conflict resolution looks like. They need to see
yes.
some of these things. Stop just hiding in front of your kids.
You don't have to hide, right? Well, and maybe there you were in a relationship before you had kids where the expression of emotion was unsafe. Got it. Work on that in your own therapy. Your kids model your behavior. 100%. I'm going to say that again. Your kids model your behavior from the way that you express your emotion, the way that you interact with others, the way that you interact with your spouse, all of it. They pick up on all of that stuff and they carry it with them, and then they take it into their own lives and implement it
Yeah.
in one way or another, right? If they're modeling, if they don't want it to be the same, they're going to model it a little bit differently, but they model that. If you never show emotion, guess what? Your kids are never going to show emotion. You're never going to know how they feel because they're never going to tell you, because you hiding it shows them that it's unsafe to do that. And then they come and they sit in our office at 27 and they're like, I don't know, I just feel nothing. I'm numb. And I'm like, why? Like, all this stuff has happened to you. I don't know, I just don't feel anything. I called my mom by her first name. I never called her mom. And I'm like, what? You did what? Yeah, no, she never cried. I didn't really feel emotionally attached to her either. That's a problem. Okay?
Because these are constantly the parents that go, I'm fine.
You're not fine.
That tell their kids they're I'm fine. So the child now has the response of, I'm fine.
A better way is to say, I am not okay right now, but I'm working through it. Right? It's okay to say you're not okay. It's okay to not be okay, y'all. And you can say that if your kids are old enough to understand that. Mommy is sad right now, but I think I'll be okay. Right? Maybe a hug from you will make me feel better. Because kids learn to be fixers. Because we are fixers. Right? And that hug will give you a dopamine boost. That's science too. Although it has to last more than like 15 seconds, I think. So, there's that. Hug your family, folks. It'll give you some dopamine. All right. Um, this one kind of gives me a little bit of a trauma response. um, let your kids talk while you listen and give short responses instead of lecturing them. Anytime I feel like somebody's getting ready to go into a lecture, I'm like, what? I just want to run away, right? That's my trauma response. My grandma, God rest her soul, was a lecturer, but she was also a talker. I don't mean lecture as in like, I'm going to educate you on this thing. It's like, I'm lecturing you over all the things that you did wrong and the things that you could do different. Do you know how shitty that makes people feel? It makes them feel shitty. So let's address it. And then we can repair the rupture that this incident has caused after. Look, you might be upset with me, but as your parent, it's my job to make sure that you are a productive, well put together human. Or if your kid comes to you and they're like, hey, you told your best friend that incident about me at the beach, and that made me feel like it's not safe to tell you things. Oh man, you know what? I wasn't even thinking like that. I'm so sorry. You can admit to your kids that you are wrong. It actually makes you a better parent. I promise. It doesn't make you a smaller person or a worse person if you do. I
Yeah.
admit that I was wrong to my kids all the time. I'm like, my bad. Shit.
So when do we kind of like, how do we get extra support?
So, I encourage, if you notice it and it persists or it gets worse, right? Just like if you went to the ER, they're like, oh, if it keeps going on or it gets worse, that's the time to reach out sooner rather than later. Putting your kid in therapy is not going to hurt them unless you find a shitty therapist, right? And maybe not even then. I don't know, right? Okay. Send them to therapy. Have a chat with your kid and a school counselor. Talk to your kid. Would you like to go talk to somebody? Would you like to go to therapy?
Yeah.
It's 2026. Kids know what therapy is. Okay.
You, the parent, if you are burnt out or hopeless, that is a sign
If
for everybody.
their behavior is so overwhelming to you
Mm-hmm.
that you are stuck in a rut with your kid, that's the time. That's the time, right? If your kid is stuck in any of the F's, right? If they're constantly in fight or fright, it's only Tuesday, and that's the second time, okay? Fight or flight, or they're fawning all the time, right? You see your other kids getting reactive, and they're just like, yes, yes, yes. And you're like, hold on, something ain't right here, right? What? That's not normal. Kids should be emotional. Kids should be somewhat dysregulated, and if they're not, then something ain't quite right. Ask somebody.
Yep.
You could always come see a therapist for a consultation and be like, hey, my kid, not a consultation, like an assessment, right? Something's not right with my kid. I don't know what's going on. I think it might be X, Y, and Z, but I'm not sure. Bring them in. Let's have a chat, right? We're looking for things that you would never even consider. And then we have a conversation and we're like, did you know? And they're like, ah, shit, right? So there's nothing wrong with, even if it starts to escalate or it just starts to manifest. There's the word, manifest. Reach out. Talk to your kid's pediatrician, to their teacher, to the school counselor, anyone, right? If there's no medical basis for what's going on, then it's up here,
Because
right?
we want therapy to be, skill building, nervous system rapport building.
I gave
We
it to
want it
you.
family level healing.
Not fixing. There, I've never had a parent come in and just be like, fix my kid. But there is that like feeling in the air of like, no. You have to fix my kid. First of all, I don't fix anything or anyone, right? I can fix the toilet, but I can't fix your kid because this is a human being, not a mechanical
It's the fact that
object.
that's happened in that office.
More than once. Simple plumbing. Look, I'm a handy girl. There was a time where I couldn't just call people. I had to figure it out. Although Tim found out very quickly how handy I actually am with certain things. But that's a story for another day. Your kids don't need to be fixed. They need to be heard. And they need to learn how to regulate just like we do.
Yeah. But big reactions don't mean something's wrong with your kid.
Nope.
Stop looking for something to be wrong with your kid. Sometimes
Don't
it just
project
means,
your shit.
yeah. Sometimes it just means they need help. They need help. They need help asking for help.
Kids in this generation, in this year of Henry Cavill 2026, are inundated with stuff from every direction. More so than we ever were. And doubly, quadruply so more than our parents ever were. Right? If I was bullied at school, I was only bullied at school. Our kids now are bullied 24/7. So there is nothing wrong with your kid having these out. I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with it. It's a sign. Look at the sign. Who was that comedian that'd be like, here's your sign? I need Christina to put that in there. Here's your sign. Your kid needs therapy, bro. Your kid needs therapy. And just like if you went, doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. You're doing the work to be a more productive human and to be, that's what I'm looking for, regulated is the best thing. So we encourage having compassion for our kids over control of their behavior, because guess what? You're not ever going to control it, no matter how hard you try. And the more you push, the more they're going to pull away. And the more they'll
Curiosity
hide
over
from you.
punishment. Yeah, curiosity over punishment, because they're learning.
I'm curious why you punched the TV in anger. I just want to know how we got here. Can you take me back? Right? Support over silence. Giving your kid the silent treatment is childish. The
Talk
silent
to
treatment
your
in and of itself is
kids.
childish, right?
Holy crap.
Like, oh my God, my mom or dad is so mad at me, they're not even speaking to me. Stop. Be a grown up and go talk to your kids. Unless
Talk
we're
to them.
having time to regulate, go back and talk to them. And you better also listen.
Just because they give you one word responses doesn't mean you can't ask the question, how was your day? What's going on?
Every day, I ask my kids every day, how was your day? It was good. What'd you do? I don't know. Like Kylie showing me
I
pictures
get
of her
it. We want to
playing with a
probe.
snake.
We want to probe further, but open the door.
You could also find other ways to ask that. How was your day? Oh, it was good. Okay, what was the best part of it? Okay, let's stop asking open-ended closed-ended questions where they'd only say yes or no to. What was the best part of your day? There wasn't one. Okay, well, what was bad about it? Because now they don't want to say it's bad. Socially, it's unacceptable to say, I had a bad day or I'm not okay. We need to change that. How many people come into your therapy session and you're like, hey, how are you? How have you been? And they're like, I'm fine. And you're like,
Lies.
and they're like, okay, I'm not fine. I was like, okay, good. I was wondering how long we were going to play this game. Kids do that too because they pick up on that. Was your day really okay? No, it wasn't. It was awful. Cool. You want to talk about it? No. Okay. I'll be here when you're ready. Don't force your kid to talk about anything. You give them the autonomy to come to you when they're ready, and I promise you, you'll get more than you could ever ask for. Right? Talk to your kids. Be present. Regulate yourself. And if you can't be, then you know where to find us. I think that's all right. We got it all. Is that everything?
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back for episode 4. You better be also watching Therapy Unpacked. Dr. Rock will be coming out with her own thing soon, I believe. I still don't have a ETA date on that. But if you're watching and liking and subscribing, you'll know. Okay? So please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Peace out. We want to thank you for tuning into this episode of Holding the Line with Got Your Six, where we are just a bunch of therapists who talk about the shit nobody wants to talk about. We hope you got something useful out of it. Stay tuned for more of our upcoming episodes every other week posted to our YouTube channel, Holding the Line GYS. If you want to help support our podcast, please like this video and subscribe to our channel and share this video with others you think may get something useful out of it. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where we will post useful information, dark humor, and more of the shit nobody wants to talk about. Go forth and do magical shit, everyone.
Oh, goodness.
Man.
I felt like Christina in that moment of stop messing up our kids.
Just listen to your kids, damn it.
Yeah, it's like, would you quit traumatizing our children?
It's like talking to them, listening. It's not, and I for some people, it's not an easy thing to do. And I have a family member. I won't be naming names, but we constantly get into disagreements over parenting styles. I am very, I don't want to say negotiating, but I'm gonna talk things out with you, right? And we'll find a way through it. And they are very much like
Authoritative.
hardcore, very authoritative, right? Spankings, the way that they respond to adults is super respectful, but it's also in very much a fawning way. And so, not that I don't want to say anything wrong with it. That's the way she was raised. That's the way she's raising her kids. But we constantly have conversations about that and how we're very different. And that's fine. Her kids are are very well behaved, very productive humans. But I always wonder how much of that is fear and intimidation and not actual regulation and stuff, right? So like we could go back and forth about that all day. But I do feel like there's a happy balance. And there's other ways to enforce consequences on your kids that don't involve you touching them with your hands. And
Mine is very much so. It's like there's the immaturity in both of the boys, and I love seeing it in that way because I was so mature
yes,
at 5, 6, 7 because I was the parentified child. And so I love seeing the boys get to be immature, get to be kids essentially, because like Josh gets so annoyed of like, why aren't they mature yet? Why aren't they doing this? I was like, because they're kids.
right, right. I I never realized, and I have to give compassion to my parents because I don't think that they knew. But when I talk to my mom and dad about it now, and they acknowledge now that it was like that they probably shouldn't have been that way, but they're like, we never had to worry about you, right? I loved to cook, so then I started cooking for everybody. I love to do this and that, so I started doing that for everybody. So my mom will look me straight in my face and be like, we never worried about you. We didn't have to. You were squared away. I'm like, Mom, that's a problem. Right? Like that's not
Yeah,
okay. I was
you're
13
fish to
years
fry in
old.
that household, okay?
Right. But, like
Yeah.
my mom worked weird hours and my dad worked shift work. And so if my mom wasn't there, I was more than happy to help my dad get lunch together or to do this or to do laundry. Like it it was just like I was fine with it. But I realize now that I was also seeking for the form of validation to be like, oh, thank you, whatever. And I've carried that with me, which is why I am an overachiever and a people pleaser in my adult life. Please look at me. Look at all the things I've done.
See,
You,
don't worry, everyone. All you therapists are messed up, usually.
I always joke, I'm like, I didn't become a therapist because I was totally rounded. You feel me? Like, we love the tea that you spill. And it's safe because we can't tell anybody. And two, like, we got in here to help because we were lacking something at some point. Or if you're like me, you went through therapy and saw how helpful it was and decided you wanted to be that person for other people in a very safe way, right? Landon was asking me about that the other day. And so I was like, I did it because I had good experience in therapy. I do EMDR because it worked so well for me. So know that like your therapist or whoever you choose is doing it because they've been there or they've had kids that have been there. Actually, probably both. I'm both. I'm